Good evening all, and welcome. You know, this is the third time I have to record this intro. First time, because of the pop filter. Second time was right before we took Pandora to her class yesterday. And the third time is now. So for those of you who didn't see or do not know, I'm just going to tell you what happened and why there was no video yesterday. Or the day before. Essentially, the day before, I recorded with the new microphone I received, because the previous one I had, the Blue Yeti, which I'm looking at right now, broke. It's very sad. The audio was coming out fuzzy. Some of you even pointed it out, and I knew that it had to go. So, I got this new microphone. But it's one that a friend of mine uses, and he'd never used a pop filter before, so I was like, oh sweet, this one doesn't need one. Wrong. It does need one. I don't know how he does it with his. But the first video I recorded, this same one, came out all crap. So I had to do it again. And this morning when I tried recording it, I only managed to record one story in the intro because we were taking Pandora to these classes she's going to. It's these kind of like baby gym classes where she plays around with other children and stuff. Anyway, and then of course, for those of you who didn't see, the moment I was pulling into the car park, did we get rear-ended, and me and my wife and Pandora were all pretty shocked. Turns out that there was the person who was behind us smashed into our car, which caused the person behind them to hit them because there wasn't enough time to react. Sad times. But there you go, that's what happened. And the class was at 10:30 and we got home at about 6:30, so we were a solid 8 hours just doing paperwork and talking to the police and talking to the insurance and then going to the dealership for Hyundai, who told us, no, we don't work with your insurance company. You have to ask them to send you the money that we give you as the quote and then pay us with that. I mean, who does that? So that's something else that was pretty rubbish too. So all in all, not a great pre-birthday. And to all of those of you who signed up, or my patrons, and we were going to do the live stream, I'm sorry that it didn't happen, but I didn't anticipate this, and it couldn't have come at a worse time really. So yeah, not good stuff happening. But anyway, I'm going to try and be positive, going to try and hope that tomorrow's a new day, a better day, and yeah. I hope that you enjoy this video, and I'm sorry for the extra long rant at the start. But without further ado, it is time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I used to love urban exploration. It was my thing. I had a number of friends online who used to explore in the area. I was quite keen on finding new places to explore, and found someone had posted a location not too far from where I lived that seemed like a gold mine. It was roughly an hour and a half from my house, and if I went at night, I should be able to slip past security. It was a giant factory complex, the likes of which I'd never seen. I'm quite surprised I hadn't heard about it until now. So that very weekend, I packed up my bag of gear and made my way in my car to this factory. I parked behind some bushes where I thought I wouldn't be seen, and made my way through the clearing to get a better view of the factory. It was still illuminated on the outside, and security were patrolling it. There was a dirt track on the ground encompassing the whole monstrosity, making it quite clear that security was still doing their job. However, from what the post said, it was relatively lax. I found my way to some outside stairs, Why they never sealed them off, I will never know, and made my way up to the roof, which was apparently the best way to find entry. I made my way to the top and took in the incredible scene. Now, one thing you need to know about me is that I love photography. I started taking picture after picture of the surrounding area, just for my own private collection, and began making my way downstairs with my flashlight. It really was an interesting place. Super dark, super creepy, and perfect for photography. I had to be careful though. The floors in some parts had completely caved in, and in other areas, people had put down boards in order to make it across certain parts of the factory. It was beautiful. There were bats swooshing above my head as I made my way through, and the droppings and carcasses that you'd expect to find were all there amongst the rubble and the trash. Graffiti was strewn around the place, but I was interested in heading for the bottom, the basement. That's where I knew I could capture some truly excellent pictures, and I wanted to see what this place was all about, so where better to head than there? I had just taken some pictures of some bats, which truthfully didn't come out all that well. As I was walking, staring at my phone, I didn't notice that there was a hole. It was shocking to say the least, as 1 minute I'm walking and the next I'm plunging down into the dark. I hit my leg and my back, and I'm pretty sure I passed out. When I woke up, I saw my flashlight was at the other end of wherever I was. I was deep. I tried crawling towards it, but had to be very careful with my hands. The first thing I realized upon trying to do that was that there were shards of glass here. Whoever had been here before had decided it would be fun to throw glass bottles down here and leave them to smash. That was painful. I had to very slowly and incredibly carefully, on my hands and knees, make my way over to the flashlight in the pitch blackness surrounded by glass. When I finally reached it, I surveyed my area, and God had I been lucky. You see, the fall I had landed on wasn't even the entirety of this precipice that had opened up. It would seem that not only had there been a hole on the floor I was on, but on the floor I had landed on, there was yet another one that led you straight to the basement. And that fall was far more unforgiving than the one I had just experienced. It seems that something had cushioned my fall, albeit not perfectly. Using my flashlight, I realized that I didn't have a way up, and that's when I began to panic. I knew it would be better that security found me than anyone else, but I was scared about receiving a trespassing charge or getting sued or some stuff like that. I tried to get myself up, but my back was in a lot of pain. So I switched my flashlight off and sat there in the dark trying to think what to do. I didn't want to drain my precious battery, as I knew that once it had exhausted, I was pretty much screwed. I contemplated trying to jump down, despite the fact that my legs hurt, but my back even more so. Would my body be able to sustain it? Moreover, would I be able to find an exit from the basement? Or is it going to be sealed off? Because if it is, I'm going to be in a worse position than I am in now. I looked around one more time, if there was any exit at all, but this was a hole. This was a fissure in the ground, and there was nothing I could do to escape it. But then I had one redeeming thought: my cell phone. I'm not sure why I didn't think of it sooner, but I pulled it out of my pocket and tried bashing in numbers. But alas, 911 wouldn't work, as there was no signal here. Just my luck. To add insult to injury, the phone screen had also shattered in the process. That wasn't that much of a pain, as I needed a new one anyway. So there in the dark I sat, alone and terrified. I was there for 24 hours. My phone screen left me that much information. I tried yelling out for help, but no one came. Nobody was around, and of course most people don't do urbex during the day of a site that's patrolled. So there I sat, in pain and in agony. It's in moments like these when you think, what if no one finds me? What if I'm left here for the rest of my life? I could just become a skeleton, and people will find my corpse years later. These are sombering and harrowing thoughts, but it's the truth. What if something like that does happen? I was very much afraid, and almost psyching myself up for the thought that I could very well die here. Fortunately for me, that didn't happen. Someone else had come urban exploring, and I started screaming very loudly when I heard footsteps. I didn't know they were urban exploring at the time, but when I heard footfalls in the distance, as this place was huge and echoey and sound travels far, did I start screaming for help. It was two guys. They looked quite muscular and well prepared. They found me within minutes, and went back to their truck to get a rope, which they so conveniently had. The guy came down with his buddy holding him. As I was sitting most of the time, I didn't realize that the drop wasn't actually all that bad. I don't think I'd have been able to get out by myself, but it was comforting to know that it wasn't too hard to make an escape with some assistance. They helped me out and asked if I could drive, and after walking around for a bit did I realize that I think I'd be okay. I thanked them profusely, and one of the guys asked me for my number, which I gave to him without question. I got back in my car and I drove home. It was Sunday night, and I had spent almost 24 hours, if not more, in that crappy facility. Since that day, I have never gone urban exploring again. Those fleeting moments in my life where I was sure I was going to die are the reason I stay away, and try and encourage other people to be more careful when doing it. Be wary, and if you're going to go, take equipment, take safety precautions, and take friends. You never know how dangerous it is, especially when not paying attention to your surroundings. About a year ago, some friends and I set out to explore Edgewater Hospital in Chicago. Hillary Clinton was born there, as well as some other people of note, so we decided to go check it out. I wouldn't call us professionals, but we do have a bit of experience with Chicago's urban exploring scene. The only entrance in that we could see was a pipe that ran overhead from an opposite building into the complex of the abandoned hospital. We shimmied across the pipe and climbed in. It was at this point I lost my hat to barbed wire. Too bad, because I'm never going back for that thing. We hopped off the pipe and climbed into a window. My friend's arm got a small cut from the glass, so we sat down inside the room to fix it up, as we always carry first aid kits as well as structure kits. I'm a pre-med. Once we are done tending to said friend, we stand and don our masks. The place was teeming with asbestos. It appears we've made it to some sort of patient wing and begin to proceed down a hallway. It's dark, but luckily we came prepared. We bring flashlights and headlamps out of our bag, and we continue down the hall. The ceilings are hanging low in some areas, and the floor whines as you walk across it. The place is not as stable as I'd like it to be. We continue down the hall, and we begin to see what I've come to know and love whenever I explore these types of places: the graffiti. I don't do it myself, but seeing the usual "do not pass" or "warning, enter at your own risk," or even the occasional male genitalia spray painted on the wall makes me feel at home. I love urban exploring. I'm in my element here. When we come to a nurse's station which is covered in files, some of them read "deceased." We move our flashlights to the rooms surrounding the station, where we see curtains drawn, covering rooms that have long since been emptied. I see one of the curtains begin to drift, but I assume it's a draft. It's freezing, despite it being midsummer, and we continue down the hall pushing through tile, our boots crushing building matter and what seems like thousands of files. Eventually we arrive at a staircase, and we opt to go down. Big mistake. As we descend, I begin to get this weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. My friends and I have a rule that if someone gets a bad vibe and wants to dip, they can. However, out of excitement, I tried to ignore it. This stairway ends in the morgue. At first, we didn't realize that it was a pitch black room, and it smelled awful. I would opt to stand next to a garbage can on a hot summer's day than to smell what I smelled there again. Of course, there were probably no bodies in there, seeing as how they cleared the place out of stuff, but the smell still lingered. We move our flashlights into the room, and this is where shit goes wrong. The minute our beams of light meet the room, we all tense up, and I can hear a friend uttering obscenities under his breath. The room was covered in blood. Or so we thought. We later found out it was rust, but hey, it's a morgue, it's dark, adrenaline running. The opposite wall is lined with rust-covered cabinets, and the side walls have large tubs. We poke around for a bit. Meanwhile, I can sense everyone is on high alert. I myself had begun to sweat profusely and feel an odd feeling in my stomach, the very same from earlier. I just keep getting bad vibes, and I ask my friends if we can leave. I'm cut off by a vigorous rattle. Our beams of light all turn to one side of the morgue, where a large tub with an overhanging faucet is. I swear to this day that I've never been more terrified in my life. The faucet had began to rattle profusely. My friends and I book it back up the stairs to where we started. Apparently this caused a lot of noise as on-site security caught up to us and told us to get out of there or that he'd call the police. On our way out, the dude seems to relax and we start asking him questions about the place. Apparently, all of those files from earlier are a point of controversy. We all file out, and he tells us the usual "don't come back or else" bullshit. Except, at the end, he makes a point of telling us that a kid died on the roof tagging a transformer. That had subsequently exploded. Whether or not this is a lie, I don't know. I just know I get bad vibes from Edgewater Hospital. I was exploring a larger abandoned munitions factory complex, several square miles big. It was late, and I was walking down one of the numerous abandoned roads. I heard a low thumping noise that grew louder and louder. I realized almost immediately it was a helicopter, a very low one. it suddenly appeared over the tree line, maybe half a mile to the east of me, with its searchlights on, pointed down. I jumped down into the ditch beside the road, which had plenty of scrub for cover. I didn't see the helicopter again the rest of the night, nor did I see anyone else. But damn, that experience was unnerving. So, my brother, cousin, and cousin's girlfriend and I decided to climb an abandoned hospital in the middle of town. My brother and I don't live here. We're only on vacation. But my cousin says he had climbed up to the first floor roof. The route was to climb up a door that led into the old morgue and onto the roof from there, as you can walk across the roof to a ladder that goes up to the third floor roof, as there's no second floor area. The top half of the ladder has a thin metal cover over it, so you can't reach the rungs, and instead have to climb up the side using the rods connected to the wall. My cousin climbs up onto the first rod and helps me get up, as I'm quite a short boy. Next is his girlfriend. However, she only gets halfway up and decides that she can't do it. So my brother stays with her while we explore. We go up to the third floor. On the top, there's the air conditioning shed thing. Clear signs that someone has stayed at least one night there. There are two other shed things on the roof. One is an entrance to the actual hospital, and the other is some cold room looking thing. Terrifyingly dark, considering it was a full moon, and with the door hanging wide open. We decided that we would go look around the roof on the opposite side, and look for an easy way in. While we were looking over the edge, we heard an ear-piercing scream. We turn around to see what it is, as it comes again and again. I don't know who it was, but my cousin looks at me and says that it was definitely his girlfriend. He is much bigger and stronger than me, and says that he needs to get down ASAP, and for me to wait if I can't get down alone. I've never seen someone get down 2 stories so quickly. That was until I fell down the ladder and landed about a meter from the very edge of the roof, and came very close to missing the roof and falling down into this particular part that was the entrance into an underground car park. I gathered myself up and ran over to my cousin. He was laying down, I assuming it was because either security had shown up or something much worse. Turns out the dumbass girlfriend tried to climb up before my brother could stop her. She was about 50 centimeters from the ground, but completely freaked out, had a panic attack thinking that she would fall and hurt herself. Turns out to be fine, and our adventure was interrupted, although we will probably go back next time. But those were the most terrifying 3 minutes of my life, especially when I went to put my foot down, felt nothing, and began to fall. There is an old abandoned factory in my city that's been shut down for about 40 years now, and since it was abandoned, people have explored and left weird stuff in certain rooms. There's a whole room filled with 80s memorabilia, never opened cassettes, old dolls, and of course there's the usual graffiti, creepy writing on the walls, and symbols that are supposed to look like they're part of some ritual. Like any abandoned place, there are a lot of legends surrounding it. No believable claims, but they're enough to freak people out. A couple of years back, a friend and I decided to go check it out. Once we get there, we circled the whole factory trying to find the best way to get in, and it looks pretty much boarded up. The old loading docks are loaded to the ground, to keep them from opening, windows boarded up, metal doors locked and chained. We finally find a rolling door that looks like it can open up. It takes about 30 minutes, but we're finally able to get about a foot in off the ground, enough for us to army crawl under it. Looking around the room, there's some usual moth-eaten mannequins and a bent-up bike, but nothing too unusual or creepy. We walked about 10 feet into the room when we heard a chuckle coming from the corridor maybe 50 feet away, like a deep, throaty laugh. Needless to say, we booked it out of there pretty fast. There is a really strange building on the campus of the university I attend. It's called BioSci and is split into 3 separate wings: the biology wing, the psychology wing, and the zoology wing. Legend has it that 3 different architects were hired to create the building, one for each wing. The architects didn't communicate with each other at all, and the result is a very strange building, with staircases that led to nowhere, closets that open up to stairwells, doors that open up to concrete walls. Apparently, if you put a sticky note on every window that you could find inside, from the outside, you would still see windows without sticky notes on them. I lived on campus in residence for 3 years, and one night, me and some of my friends from my floor decided to explore BioSci. The campus was kept open until 11. At first, it was really fun. We found some strange things, as well as a freezer claiming to have a Yeti inside. Then it took a creepy turn. We were exploring the basement when we came upon a large closet. We looked inside, and it appeared that someone was living in there. There was a mattress on the floor, a backpack full of things beside it, and some clothes thrown about. We noped out of there pretty fast and continued exploring, but then began hearing footsteps behind us. Every time we looked back, we couldn't see anyone or anything, so we continued on. Then we rounded a corner and came face to face with a very angry and disheveled looking man. We all screamed and began to run the other way. As we're running, we can hear the man yelling at us, and we continue screaming and searching for the exit. Finally, we get outside the building and all start running for our residence. One of my friends falls. We tell her it's every man for himself and keep running as fast as we can. In hindsight, it was probably just a homeless person that was living on campus, which is pretty common, but holy cannoli was that scary. I went to an abandoned factory that was being prepped for demolition. This was at the core of a major city. Seeing that the best time to go alone was after sundown, I find myself wandering around the main floor looking for the stairway to go up. My goal was to get to the rooftop, since there was an abandoned billboard atop of it overlooking the freeway and some high-rises. So finding the right set of stairs was key. After walking around the bottom floor for quite some time, using a tiny flashlight to guide myself in the darkness, I find a set of stairs to go up. The second floor is equally dark, but I still decide to explore it as much as possible. The layout is genuinely interesting, since it's an 100-year-old building. I notice that every floor seems to have a different layout, so there's a lot to take in. I grow accustomed to using a small flashlight to cut through the darkness. I go up to the third floor and make a right into a pocket of darkness. I can sense it's a big open space, and when I swing the flashlight, the first thing I notice is some type of pattern drawn on the walls, and I realize it's all drawn in red. Then I realize I'm in a room where the drawings are on all of the walls surrounding me. Then it sinks in that the graffiti is some glyph-like language. Some of those symbols are your typical satanic drawings. And that's when I see the Pierre de Resistance, a mural, serpents, glyphs, and more. I think I froze for a good 10 minutes, expecting to be jumped by some fanatics, and I noped out of there. When we were about 15 or 16, we wanted to go to this abandoned industrial mill at the edge of the forest. There were about 5 of us. To get to the mill, you had to get across this running stream, but you could hop across on rocks if you were agile enough. We got to the mill and couldn't find an openable door, but we had a nosy outside and saw some giant metal machines and a room full of exposed wires, as well as views into the inner bits of the building. Lots of chunks of metal and chairs and stuff. It hadn't really been ransacked, and there was no graffiti, so we were pretty psyched, feeling like we were the first ones there. We kicked this boarded up window a few times. Its nails were pretty tightly sealed, but it eventually fell in. I fell for a second or two and hit the ground with a loud smash. When we looked in, we couldn't see the bottom. I volunteered to go first, and I sat on the edge and eased myself down, but my feet still didn't touch the ground. So, I just jumped. I landed on top of the board, and it made a very loud noise. All of my friends asked if I was okay. Turns out, we'd kicked in the original window behind the board, and when I jumped down, it was really loud, and they thought that I had hurt myself. I turned on my headlamp and helped the rest of them down. So in this building, we were in the basement. There was a lift in the middle, a proper old-school Bioshock type thing, and we pulled the trellis aside and got inside to have a look. At the back was a panel, and when I shone my lamp on it, it had some proverb about owing our lives to God. Whilst I was looking at the room, it suddenly lit. I was dazed. Turns out my friend flicked a switch inside, and the lights still worked. We went nuts. It was super exciting. We heard a shuffling sound from upstairs. Since we were in the basement, we had to go up to get out of there, and we were scared shitless. At the end of the day, we were just kids. Resigning ourselves to an encounter, we picked up a nearby spade and started creeping up the stairs. We heard sounds coming from behind a door. We busted through, and inside were 10 builders. They looked straight at us, shovel in hand. We instantly started running, found an emergency door that opened from the inside, and ran through the woods. The police passed us going the other way, and I tripped over my shoelace when I saw them, and now have a neat scar on my elbow from the fall. My boyfriend and I were exploring an abandoned winemaker's mansion in Portugal. It was a very beautiful, possibly 100-year-old villa on the banks of the River Douro, crumbling hard, swallowed by vines and other types of vegetation, and surrounded by palm trees. It's a stunning place, but man, did it raise some spooky questions. My boyfriend and I found it last year and spent a good chunk of the day exploring it. We went back this summer, and the vines and wild grasses and whatnot had really taken over. We almost couldn't find it again. We had to wade through shoulder-high grass and ferns, very prehistoric looking. First off, before you even get to the house, you have to make your way through some serious wild grass and vines. The first sign that there used to be a mansion there is a shaded cave, which looks every bit as Victorian as you'd expect, with some carved stone benches overgrown with moss and a natural spring at the back. Directly above the spring, however, there is a hole in the rock wall and a passage/tunnel just big enough for an adult to crouch down in and skitter along into the pitch darkness. Assuming you got over that and retrieved your heart from the bottom of your stomach after staring into that abyss long enough, as you could swear someone was in there, you'll find more caves in the rock wall below the house. The biggest one confirms that they are all a series of secret passages. The mouth of it is stuffed with some old chairs and a nightstand, presumably to keep nosy tourists out, or perhaps something in. Once you've recovered from that too, and you get to the house itself, the first thing you'll notice are these huge stone vats in the cellar, which we assumed were used for making wine, and hundreds of dusty, mostly unlabeled wine bottles strewn everywhere. You need to watch your step. We found the doll on the first floor. As you advance down the first floor corridor, the first room to your left will look a lot like someone has been burning documents in a hurry, about 80 years ago. The floor is littered with random old shoes, mostly ladies, and burnt pieces of paper. None of the shoes have pairs. From what we could distinguish, the papers were some kind of official records from the 1920s. The floor itself is also incredibly unstable. You might want to keep close to the walls. As you keep going down the corridor, you'll find more cobweb shoes at random and cases upon cases of empty wine bottles. Both the shoes and bottles look to be circa 1930s to 40s. Finally, the demon baby doll. In the doorway to what looks like a used-to-be living room, you'll find an old, naked baby doll, possibly missing an eye. It'll be sitting on the doorstep in an ungodly contorted position, cobwebbed all over. My boyfriend and I decided to give it one last act of kindness and put it in this huge wooden trunk we found in the corner of that room. She seemed happier there. This summer, however, we found the baby doll on a table in the middle of the same room, wrapped in a string of rosary beads. Yeah. Apart from rotting floors and spooky-looking curtains, there isn't much else on the first floor. However, if you manage to somehow make your way to the crumbling attic, you'll find a truly delicious surprise. And by delicious, I mean creepy and puzzling as hell. While hanging around the mansion, we ran into an old man who apparently lived right next door. He said the house had been uninhabited and derelict for as long as he'd lived there, so roughly 60 years. And you would definitely believe that, save for the attic. Even though the rest of the house looked like it had been hastily evacuated sometime in the first half of the 20th century, the attic had been inhabited as recently as the 90s to early 2000s. We found a child's room with modern-looking furniture, painted red and green, and school manuals from the time period, as well as collectible stickers, the likes that you would get in chewing gum in the 90s, some coloured photographs, and in the middle of the attic, a room with the floor caved in, under a huge pile of rotting leather and fabric and God knows what. The attic, to me at least, raised the most questions. Did a family move in? If so, how did the neighbor not see them? Why would they only occupy the attic? What about the rest of the house? We had to get out of there ASAP, however, as the whole structure was really unstable, and we could have dropped through the floors at any time. We're both quite light, but we still would have to have walked close to the walls and only rest our entire weight on support beams and doorways. In my town, there was an old insane complex spread out through multiple buildings. Most of it has been torn down or repurposed over the years. However, one of the buildings that remained looked to be an old radio room or something like that. As I was walking around this room, I noticed stairs that led below. The basement of the building was flooded at around 2 feet high. Around this time, I remembered they built maintenance tunnels throughout the complex, and thought this would be a good entrance. I left and came back with boots and waders. When I got down, the basement was just trashed. There was rubbish floating all around, but the entrance to the tunnels were bricked off. Then I tripped on something as I stopped to look around and take it in. I realized that the bottom was filled with various animal parts and bones. I looked down, and there was a dog that had obviously been killed by human hands. It was cut open, just laying there on the shallow side, maybe an inch or two of water. I apparently stumbled on some deranged person's animal sacrifice room, and I got out of there really fast. A week later, that building was set on fire. My cousin and I once found a makeshift wooden cross sticking out of the ground. We were creeped out, but wrote it off as just something a kid made and stuck in the ground for laughs. Eventually they began construction in that area, and no corpse was found that we were aware of. Anyway, normally, we wouldn't go into the houses that they were building nearby, because we figured it probably wasn't safe. We were kids though, and eventually curiosity got the better of us, and we went in. It was in the early stages of construction, so basically just a house frame and foundation. We hung around there for a bit, and realized there was nothing fun about half-built houses, so we headed home. After about 2 hours we got back, and we hear sirens. We look out and see that there's a fire truck heading into the woods. The fire department made sure no one went into the woods, and there was a small crowd of neighbors formed by the entrance. We asked around for a bit, and one of the firemen told us that a house had burnt down. Turns out, it was the same one that we were in not 3 hours ago. A couple of days later on the local news, there was a story about a serial arsonist who was protesting the construction in the woods by burning down houses. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. And for all of those of you who share a birthday with me, I hope you had a great day. So, I realized I never fully updated you about everything earlier. There was one bit I missed. The insurance covered the hospital appointment, which we went to, and we're all fine. Pandora was the finest of all of us. I suppose the car seats do their job, but my wife really hurt her arm. It's kind of swollen, and she's been given some stuff for that. And I hurt my neck. I guess it was whiplash, but you know, I'll be alright. So yeah, we're all fine. There probably won't be more rants in the next few videos, so I am sorry about that. One thing I also forgot to mention, which I said in the previous outros, was that I'm quite scared given what YouTube is doing, They recently stripped Let's Read and the Paranormal Scholar of their monetization, but they made a fair amount of noise on Twitter and they managed to get it back. So what I'm saying is, if you could follow me on Twitter, that would mean a lot. Because if worst comes to worst and they take away my monetization, I'm going to need to make a lot of noise. And the more people who will retweet and like the tweets I make will help YouTube see the issue and try and rectify it. Also, my brother has a new video out. If you haven't seen it, I would really recommend it. And I'm going to leave it at the top of the description and at the very end. It would mean a lot to me if you guys would watch it. So, I hope you do, but thank you nonetheless. I'm going to leave it there for today, guys. I hope that everyone has had a fantastic day. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.